Hello everyone, my name is Ian. Welcome to D20 Sundays. Today we're talking about shining the light on your players, giving each of them a chance in order to shine throughout the entire campaign. I've tried doing this with my players as best as I can. A good example would be one of the longer running sessions longer running campaigns that I've been doing as of late with Edgar, Varys, Vordel, Bamouge, and Andre. With them, I've already shined the light on in the past on Bamouge, with him representing a opposition to the old ways when it comes to the goblins. As he's playing a hobgoblin, his full thing is Colonel Bamouge Wittick, who is a hobgoblin in the Fetner military, and a colonel in the Fetner military, who was essentially raised alongside humans. He never knew the old ways of the goblins. He just wasn't around during that time. And the Goblin Blood War has just been a little over 30 years ago, so there's that. That was literally essentially the dying breath of the old ways, in a sense. But his arc, as far as focusing on when it came to the goblins and the goblins under Wolfgren, was showing him as the new way of goblin kind versus the old way of the goblin kind. Because the old ways with the tribes, with them getting together and creating chaos constantly, and so on and so forth, but essentially stepping away from that and towards intermingling with the other races, intermingling with humans, kobolds, orcs, and so on, and essentially accepting that the old ways are going away. And I feel like Bamouge did very well with that, very sticking to, like, no, I am of the Fetner military. I was raised with the Fetner military. I was raised with humans. I'm not betraying what I have built up my entire life just to go back to the old ways, because every goblin I've met says we need to go back to the old ways. And because the hobgoblin shaman says we need to go back to the old ways. I'm not doing it. And I feel like I did very well with that, and he did very well with that. There was some parts where I messed up, but we're not going to talk about that. After him, I started focusing a bit more on Andre, and working with his character and working with what he's been able to do and so forth, as well as with Vordel, who is the Inquisitor. And I figured I can kind of do them both at the same time, which I kind of have been, because I've been sprinkling Vordels throughout, because he is an Inquisitor, sprinkling throughout here and there hints of a secondary faction of Inquisitors that have already infiltrated his faction, and they're trying to bring around the end of the world. And he's been seeing hints here and there. Sometimes he picked them up, sometimes he didn't. But now he's fully on their trail, and just as he's getting fully on their trail, we've closed the arc for Andre, or at least closed it some to where it can be revisited again, to where it shined on Andre and his family as who Andre is and where did he come from. Who was his father, not just the gnomish foster parents that he had, but his real father, and who was his mother, and what they represented, and what they mean, and what his half-brother means to orcs, and especially his tribe in general. Again, that same meaning of the old ways are going away. Both Andre and his brother represent, in a sense, the new way for orcs. Intermingling with the other races, going forward and dropping their xenophobic, very isolated ways, because it's just not helping them survive and strive anymore. They need to adapt. Andre is a perfect example of that, being a half-orc and having lived with humans most of his life. Meanwhile, Torque, his brother, is wanting to start making those changes, but he can't until he is the war chief, and that's the reason why they met, was so that way Torque could finish his quest and prove that he is worthy to become the next war chief. For Vordel, since he is Inquisitor, we're dealing more with the collapsing sun, and he is researching into them as well as to what the Blue Rose is. Which the Blue Rose is a bit of a red herring, but not quite. It is essentially just a code word that he looked way too deeply into. But it's essentially just a code word. But where we left off was that they arrived in the town that they were going to meet up with someone who has more information on the collapsing sun. Meanwhile, with them, they have NPCs, 3 of them, Odwin, Udgar, and Aaron. Odwin and Udgar are just, muscle boys who are, like, hey, we decided to start adventuring, and we found this one cleric. She's kind of weird, but she agreed to come with us, and, hey, we've been a mercenary group ever since. Aaron herself is a Aasimar, a fallen-ish Aasimar of Velth of the Pale Realm, meaning she is technically heresy incarnate, according to Vordal's Inquisitor code. But she also is investigating the collapsing sun, and she said it herself to them because Velth doesn't want the end of the world. Her choices are not her own, as she is a celestial being, in a sense, but she does not get very many choices that are hers, and Velth does not want the world to end, thus she must investigate the collapsing sun and stop them. So they're kind of allies at this time, but as far as how long that is going to be yet to be seen. But when they got to the town of Hawick, where they were supposed to meet up with, I believe I named him, not Roland, Randall? Oh dang, I forgot his name. I forgot the NPC's name. See, this is why we DMs have notes. That's why we always have notes, so that we can remember what the NPC's name is. I'll remember it later, and it'll aggravate the crap out of me. But, nonetheless, when they got to that town, they discovered that several people had died, and then there's this weird monster, this strange abomination of a creature that no one's ever seen before, except for Vordal has seen it before. And the other adventuring groups who were there at Hawick to visit the museum there, for, lore reasons, they were there for, backstory of the world itself. Those other adventuring parties dealt with that monster, but several people had already died before they could, kill it. And they're like, this thing was tough. And Vordal recognized that monster as the one that killed his master, so he knows that the collapsing sun is either there or was there. And that's where we left off, because now as I said, we're shining the light onto Vordal and his arc now. The only problem I have is the other two, Edgar and Varys. Edgar, I've gotten bits from him as to what we want to do with his backstory. At the moment, what I've got is that he has an extreme hatred for goblins because when he was a child, the town he lived in was destroyed by the goblin blood war. The town was caught between 2 tribes of goblins that just went to war and just brutalized everything in between them. Varys, he is Varys. I really haven't gotten much of a backstory at all from him, so I kind of need to work with him in order to get more information from him, so that way I can try and tailor an arc towards him, or at least, if it's not dealing with his past, dealing with what he wants to do with his future. Anyways, that's it for this D20 Sundays. I hope you enjoyed this tale, as well as, got some ideas as to what you should do with your players, and as far as focusing parts of the campaign on them, dealing either with their past, their present, or their future, but giving them a time to shine, as this is their arc, this is their time to be in the limelight. Anyways, I'll catch you guys next time. Laters.